Yeah, I know, I'm late. Sorry, but at the same time, this is something that I didn't want to jump into immediately, and I didn't want to just read the news and all of a sudden rush to my microphone and start recording a commentary on. I wanted to let this sink in a little bit, and I wanted to actually think about it a lot more before going into a full-on video creative mode where I talk about JUDD BRACKETT and the Vancouver Canucks. Because the big news has just been revealed today that JUDD BRACKETT, the Vancouver Canucks director of amateur scouting for the past few years, is stepping away and leaving the organization. Now, the reasons as to why this is happening, they haven't been new reasons. These have been things that the media has been talking about for months, and if you're anywhere on Canucks Twitter, you know exactly the narratives that people are talking about, and pretty much a lot of this has to do with the idea of JUDD BRACKETT and the scouting department wanting to do scouting department things without the influence of GM Jim Benning, assistant GM John Weisbrod, and the rest of management. This has been a conflict that people have been talking about in Vancouver media for a long time now, and we finally have ourselves the climax to be of what exactly the outcome is here. And the outcome is the Vancouver Canucks departing ways with JUDD BRACKETT at the conclusion of his contract. Let's take a look at this right here. This is a comment from Jim Benning. "We're grateful for Judd's contributions and leadership at an important time for our team. Judd earned the respect of his peers and fans alike. We're proud of what he and our amateur scouting staff have accomplished. Although difficult, we believe this is the right decision for the future of our team. We are confident we have a strong scouting staff and are well positioned for the upcoming NHL draft." The big kicker in this article here on NHL.com/Canucks is at the very end. No further changes were made to reporting structure or personnel among the amateur scouting staff. The final draft decisions continue to be the responsibility of GM Jim Benning. Now that is the ultimate kicker, because if you have been following what this story has entailed over the past few months, you would have seen the idea that JUDD BRACKETT just wants a little bit more freedom in making draft picks, which is something that many people would say is a good thing or a bad thing. It really depends. This was a big argument when people were talking about Elias Pettersson and who wanted to draft Pettersson, because it was reported that, you know, Jim Benning wanted Cody Glass instead of Elias Pettersson, but then other people were saying no, but the scouts were saying that they wanted Pettersson, which means that the scouts are the guys who thought that Pettersson was better and that they're the guys who know what they're talking about. But at the same time, Jim Benning is still the guy who allowed JUDD BRACKETT to make the pick and say, yeah, Pettersson is our guy and we'll agree with your opinion. This philosophy boiled over even harder in the 2019 NHL draft, where if Jim Benning had the option, there was a very real threat that they would have drafted Philip Broberg instead of Vasily Podkolzin. Now, no disrespect to Broberg, but I don't want Broberg over Podkolzin. That was never something that I thought would have been a smart idea, but apparently Jim Benning wanted that. The only reason they said no and they took Podkolzin instead was because Broberg wasn't available. But if he was, there's an idea that definitely presents itself as something that could have happened. It all plays into this idea of Jim Benning wanting control over the draft picks, much to the dismay of the scouting staff, who spend all their entire year scouting these players, watching them, following them around, and knowing what they're about. So that's an idea that people have been talking about, and that's kind of why people are saying there's conflict here. Let's take a look at what Jim Benning said on a media conference call earlier today. He said that JUDD BRACKETT was offered a 2-year deal, but he rejected it. Benning says, "We've got good people in place for whenever the draft is, and we expect to have a good draft." That's what Benning says. This is what JUDD BRACKETT says on his private Twitter account. First off, his private Twitter account used to be at Canucks Scout. Now it's just Judd for the defense, so he did change his Twitter handle. I want to thank the Vancouver Canucks organization, its fans, and the city for the past 12 years. I am very grateful for the opportunity to have led the amateur scouting department. I leave proud of the work we did, the collaboration within the department, and the replenishment of the prospect pool. Unfortunately, an agreement on the level of input going forward with regard to staff personnel and process could not be reached. For those who worked with me, I enjoyed working as a team, and please know our friendships are forever. That's interesting right there. A level of input going forward with regard to staff personnel and process was the problem here. This suggests to me that JUDD Brackett wanted a little bit more of a hand in deciding who the Canucks would have as their pro scouts and how much weight their decisions held at the draft table. This weight thing is something that people have been talking about for a long time. It was even hinted at when Trevor Linden was on TSN 650 a few months ago, where he talked about how he gave JUDD Brackett the ultimate opportunity to say, yes, this is what we found, this is our guy, and this is the guy that we're going to take if he's available. That was during the Elias Pettersson days, when the Canucks sort of wanted to draft Glass, but instead they went with Petey. Furthermore, though, Jim Benning has his own comments to talk about with autonomy. Here's a quote from Thomas Drance. "I believe in a chain of command. I don't know too many places where a team is going to give a head scout total autonomy to make all the picks without collaborating with people higher up." This suggests that JUDD Brackett just wanted to make every single pick without Jim Benning's input or knowledge on the discussion. Obviously that may not be true, but that's what I infer from this quote over here. It's a very powerful one indeed, and it's something that I think a lot of people on Canucks Nation wouldn't necessarily think about as something that even had the possibility of transpiring based off of everything that we have heard over the past few months. Meaning, maybe it's not Jim Benning that wanted to take over JUDD Brackett and his scouting department. Maybe it was JUDD Brackett who wanted to take over everything that Jim Benning would ultimately need to decide a part in as well. No, I'm not going to say that that's true or whatever, it's just what I'm inferring here. Here's another quote from Jim Benning on Sportsnet 650. He says that JUDD Brackett wanted autonomy over the first two picks, and Jim didn't want to give him that. Now, I will say that's very explicit. Like, that is exactly what we're trying to infer here, just verbally spat out in a very literal sense. And I think the way the NHL draft works with drafting teams, you have to at least consider the opinion of the GM. Of course, I have defended JUDD Brackett in the past and said that, obviously, the guys who spend all of their year scouting, those are the guys who probably deserve a little bit more say at the table when it comes to making the draft pick. But at the same time, the GM is usually the one who does influence those first two picks. So, to hear this coming off of Sportsnet 650 is definitely really interesting as well. I'm not sure how to take that. But also, we have ourselves another quote here from Jim Benning, where he says that the Canucks' plan is to move on without JUDD Brackett, and that they have a lot of good people still in place, including Ryan Bache, who a lot of people on Vancouver Canucks radio probably recognize as a guy who did contribute to Sportsnet 650 in the past. He talked about the prospects on their prospect show a year ago, and he recently got hired by the Vancouver Canucks as their video analyst guy. So who knows, maybe Ryan Bache is getting an opportunity here to become a bigger voice in the world of scouting. And if he's the guy who comes over and replaces JUDD Brackett, then boy oh boy, I'm gonna be honest, I'm pretty okay with that. Ryan Bache is somebody who I've respected for a long time because of his scouting knowledge, his prospect knowledge, his hockey knowledge, and his story, where he just came out of nowhere writing about the Canucks online, and all of a sudden he's now in the conversation as people who the Canucks value highly going into the future. So, wrapping all this up, because I know we've just been looking at quotes, etc., apparently JUDD Brackett wanted a very large piece of the pie when it came to Vancouver Canucks drafting decisions and scouting decisions. But the Canucks didn't like that. So much to the point that when the Canucks offered JUDD Brackett the extension, he rejected it, and now we have confirmation that he is gone. The guy who many people will say is the sole contributor to building the Vancouver Canucks' young core and prospect pool over the past few years. Now, am I disappointed? Absolutely. But at the same time, the conditions that we've learned from the radio and these quotes, etc., I'd be lying if I said I was surprised. I'm really not surprised that this has happened, and It's just kind of weird taking a look at all the stuff that's been revealed where JUDD Brackett seemed to have wanted a little bit more than most directors of amateur scouting could chew off of. But at least, hey, if this is an opportunity for Ryan Bache to come in and do his thing for scouting, then, that wouldn't really seem like such a bad trade-off now, wouldn't it? Comment down below what you think about JUDD Brackett, the whole situation here. It's very strange, I know that, but I hope you enjoyed this video, such as that Trollson 99, and bye.